All right, so here we play against
Popovic. Yeah. Popovic was a young grandmaster from Yugoslavia, and the game was very interesting because he was a good. He played with pleasure the King's Indian, and of course, I played my favorite variation, Zemish, against the King's Indian, and we had the clash, the theoretical clash in this
King's Indian with
So e4, d6, f3, castle, bishop e3. Okay, we have the Zemish already.
Yes.
a6, queen d2, and now b6. Well, b6, if he wanted to play something else, knight c6 was the main alternative here. Knight c6, very complicated game. In my opinion, white is better all the time, but you have to show it. So b6. But after b6, rook d1. Here he played rook e8. He doesn't allow bishop a6, and he prepares later on by move order a very interesting line for black, where he tries to have always counterplay on the central squares and on the queen side. Rook e8, okay, rook e8 is all right. Knight e2, knight f7. That is a little bit unusual. He wants to play quickly c5. And later on, if possible, the knight from b8 to c6. So now, in this position, probably the best move is d5. I mean, you give him the central squares e5 and c5, but if he lets you here, you want to come quickly with the knight in d4, bishop e2, castle, clear edge for white. So if you want something, he has to play immediately c5. Okay, c5, and now you take en passant c6, and you have a little bit unusual position from King's Indian. So, okay, now knight f4, very good, much better than knight d4. Knight d4 is probably even, the position. A little bit better for white, but not enough. So knight f4, you have all the pieces on board, and the position is very, very complicated. Rook b8, rook, bishop e2, knight c5, and castle. Okay, until now everything is normal. And now the small surprise. Okay, he gives you the d5 square. You have to put the knight in d5. But after knight d5, he has time to play knight e6, and he wants to come also with the piece on d4. I mean, he controls many times the square d4, and the game is very unclear. So if you want something, you have to play very actively immediately on the queen side before. And from now on, the game is very sharp. You see. Knight d4, bishop d3, of course, and he plays bishop d7.
So you play the bishop on d3?
On d3. I mean,
not to exchange it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to give the bishop, of course. I mean, by playing b4. If the pawn was on b3, it was okay to give the bishop. But now, if he has time to take in e2, later on he can attack you quickly the pawn from c4, with rook c8. And therefore, it's not clear at all what happens here. So now a4, very active, of course, bishop c6, and now you have to go on. Rook b1, queen d7, and now b5, of course. Now b5, he takes, you take with the c pawn. If you take with the a pawn, it's not clear because it's very difficult to continue the tactical play on the queen side. Now the idea for white is to play very quickly a5 and then have the free pawn from b5 and then in b6. But, okay, you arrive until b6, but it's not clear, I tell you. So he takes immediately, you take in d5, and he has now time to come with the knight in c5. Why is now unclear? Because the position is good for black, because he has control of the black squares in c5 and in d4. Now you have to show that white has still a better game, but the game is really very complicated because now you have to play with different color bishops later on. So now you have to go on with a5, of course. a5, he takes in a5. Now take in b4, takes in d4, and b6. Okay, until now everything is very clear. Now you give him the chance to take in d3 and have a pawn up. But the position with pawn up for black is better for white. Because the knight from d5 is excellent, if you take back one pawn, for let's say the pawn from a5 later on, is winning for white, because the knight is much better than the bishop from g7, and you have control on the central squares and the free pawn on b6, probably enough to try to play for win. But even here, the game is very, very complicated. It's very unclear. You'll see the next moves. You see, he found the best counterplay, and if you try to show that white is much better immediately, it's a little bit dangerous for both. Yeah. So okay, bishop b5 is okay. Queen b7, queen takes a5. Right. Rook a8, queen d2, and now rook a3. And in this position, you see, very sharp. If, the first glance like this is better for white, because the pawn is already in b6. But it's very difficult to demonstrate how you can play for win in a few moves, you see. So now I played queen b4, rook a2, and now rook a1, rook a8. Okay, he took in a2, and now bishop c4. And he played rook c2 and rook d1, h5. Okay, now knight c7, it seems that white is almost winning, because after knight c7, you want to play very quickly bishop d5. If you have time to play bishop d5, black probably he resigns in a few moves, But starting from here, the game in both were in time trouble. And from here, the game is very, very complicated. It's very unclear who is better, So he found a very strong move, d3. Very active, of course. Now, bishop d5 was not very clear, because he plays on the black squares all the time, He moves the queen, of course, and afterwards has a very good control on the black squares, and it's not clear at all. So after d3, I played queen b5, yes, and he gave the exchange. He gave the exchange to have the control on the black squares. And it seems now that black is better. It's a very complicated position, You have to accept to take in c4, he takes, and now he threatens a check. If he has time to give one check, he's winning for black, So knight d5, queen b2, and now...
But why not give you check right now?
No, he loses the queen.
Yeah, sorry.
I attack the queen, of course.
Yes.
So he has to play queen b2. And from now on, 2-3 moves, you have to play the best moves very precisely, because otherwise you have chances to lose the game, especially in time trouble. So, okay, queen b4. And now he played queen c2, queen b1. Very good. And after queen b1, knight b3, the game, I told you, very tactical, both in time trouble, and black threatens to play for win here. One small mistake, it's enough to lose here, But white is better. And after king h1, he has to play something, and he played bishop b2. And after bishop b2, I played knight e3, yes. Now, what can he play? Knight d4. It seems very good, because if he doesn't play knight d4, he loses the pawn from d3, and it's enough. Instead of knight d4, queen e2 is already lost for black. Queen e2, queen takes d3, and black is lost. If he loses the pawn from d3, it's finished. Exchange up for nothing.
Yeah.
But after knight d4, it seems that black has a very strong position, because now you have to play something with white.
You cannot take the queen here with the knight?
You take queen in c2, yes. You take in c2, and
actually,
he takes...
This is what's happening? Okay.
Yeah, he takes, and now what do you play? It seems that black has an excellent game,
Yeah.
But now the surprise, queen takes c2. Knight takes c2, rook d2. You take back the pawn, you take back the piece, because the king is, on the white square, It doesn't have check.
Yes.
And okay, now you have to demonstrate that the endgame is winning for white. Very difficult endgame. So you take in c2, and he played very well h4. Now, the only way to try to demonstrate that white is winning is by playing later on the move h3. But, everything on white. But when you play h3, it's very difficult to win because he controls the squares, the black squares. And later on, the only way to do it, to try to play to win, is to come with the king from g1 until c6. The only way. But when you come with the king in c6 very far, he has time to come later on, probably with the king to g3. If he comes with the king in g3, it's not clear at all how you can win. You can, but it's very complicated, you see. And therefore, the endgame is very unusual and very interesting one, you see. So, from this tactical moment we had before, we arrived in such an endgame where everything is still very unclear. So, all right, we played h3, f6.
So basically, he
waits. No, he waits. He controls the black squares, and he waits to see what is your plan. The only plan, as I told you, is to try to come with the king, because rook alone you can't win. You have to move something with the king. So let's say you arrive with the king to e3.
Yes.
But when you arrive to e3, the only way to try to win is to play f4 later on, but he doesn't give you the possibility. He plays king g5 or g5. And again, he controls all the squares, on the black square. All right, so he doesn't give you the possibility. He plays on the black squares, white plays on the white squares all the time. So f6, king d3, g5, okay. Complete control on the black squares, no? Rook a7, bishop g3. Has to wait. Okay, white doesn't give the possibility to arrive quickly with the king, and he prepares the maneuver, king c4, b5, c6. This is the idea, Okay, if this is enough or not, we'll see. So, bishop f4, king c4, he waits, no? Rook d5, the best. And now, okay, we arrived, king b5. All right, he waits again. Good. We had everything. We arrived to c6, and now we have to demonstrate that that is enough to try to play for win. All right, rook d5, b5, bishop e3, rook b8. The only moment, when you can, now, if he doesn't play very active king e5, after rook e8, it's enough and white wins. The idea is very clear. If you have time to give check in e8, king f7, king d7, rook e6, you sacrifice the rook in d6, and the game is finished. Later on, any endgame is completely winning for white. But of course, exactly now, he has time to play king e5. And now, okay, now you have to show that you win. You have a good chance to win. How you win? Against the idea king f4, king g3. If he arrives in g3, it seems that he has very good counterplay.
Because he can take the pawns from.
Yeah, if he takes the pawn from g2 and h3, very unclear. Yeah. So, but now the game is winning for white, but move by move. Rook e6, king g3. Okay, now you take in f6, he takes in g2, and you take in e6 in d6. Now the only move.
But here wasn't.
If he plays bishop d4, king d5 wins.
No, but here it wasn't better to take directly here.
Well, the same, king g3. Now you have to take with the rook to have a very active rook. You see, this is the difference. The rook must be very active. So rook e6, this e6 is good. King g3, everything forced. Now we took in d6. And he had to play bishop f4, because if he doesn't play bishop f4 and takes immediately in h3 or f3, you have time to move the pawn. If you have time to move e5, it's finished immediately in two moves. So bishop f4 is the only move, and now this is the winning move. Why? Because now he has to take in h3, it seems, no?
Yeah.
If he has time to take in h3, you play immediately e5 and wins. E5. King takes h3, no? e5. And when he takes back in e5, f4 check. and you win the bishop and queen.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So, okay, you win a very important tempo, and he has to play bishop g3. Now, king d5. Again, the same thing. If he plays king takes h3, e5 wins again. The same idea, So, move by move, I told you. Now, again, Zugzwang. He played this, e5, and he plays bishop e1, the last hope, you see. The last hope, king c4. Exactly now, we take the possibility bishop b4, protecting the e7 square.
Yeah.
Very important. King c4, king g2 now, e6, and now h3, and now again the winning move, rook d1. And now, if he has to give the bishop, because now after bishop g3, we play e7 and winning, So if he plays h2, we take the bishop, he queens, we take the queen, he takes the queen, e7, and finished. Yeah.
So he resigned here.
He resigned, yeah.
So if you play like that,
you take the bishop. Now he has to queen, no?
Yes.
You takes, and e7, and wins. Mathematically,
Yeah.
Move by move. But
One move faster.
Yes, but very interesting endgame. And, you win by one tempo, but it's enough.
Yes.
Yes.
But we have to...
Yeah, you
Get
have to
that tempo.
calculate, of course. When you are top grandmaster, you have to calculate very well, you see. And, of course, that was decisive to win the tournament, this game, Yeah.
Beautiful.
But beautiful game. Very beautiful end game,
True. Thank you, Mr. Gheorghiu.
You are